As officers, you are required to write in a cohesive fashion on issues pertaining to decisions or policies before administration and also before the country. The capacity to say what you mean and the capacity to mean what you say. So the essay. Our job is to pick up the one on which each one of us thinks that that would be my best essay. No other criteria. Your best essay. So, my dear friends, as always, namaste and all my absolute eternal best wishes for you. Having such best wishes and extending them to you is my pleasure and always a great pleasure. This morning, September 16, UPSC Civil Service Main Exam 2022 commenced. And as is the usual practice, the first paper was essay paper from 9 to 12 in the morning. Here I am around 4 p.m. coming to you happily with some points regarding the analysis of this essay paper. I intend to do the same for all GS4 papers, and personally I would also be talking to you about history and political science optional papers. Chanakya Mandal Pariwar faculty team also has helped me prepare some very crucial and interesting, I would call them inspiring points about the essay paper. So for coming few minutes, let's just enjoy keeping the essay paper in the focus. Usually all these years I have been telling youngsters that there always are two sections in essay paper, respectively section A and B. And generally speaking, one of the section is what we call as rather abstract subjects. They can also be called as kind of philosophical subjects. There may be some meaningful quotes, and you can say some poets, some writers, possibly thinkers, some ideas, and you are expected to develop an essay between 1200 to 1500 words, one section. And another section generally deals with very concrete subjects, very concrete issues which are almost directly related to India and the issues or problems or even policies regarding India. Normally speaking, these two. I have also normally been saying that more often than not, there is a topic which relates somewhere to the environmental issue. And personally, I am convinced that that is the right thing to do, because according to me too, environment, that is the climate change caused by global warming, is problem number one, issue number one in front of the entire earth, including your and my personal life. So one subject which relates to overall environment. Usually, again, more often than not, there also has been a subject which pertains to women and the issues pertaining to women. So it could be women's empowerment, various laws. It may relate to social educational situation of women or the unfortunate fact of increasing crime against women. And recently, our sadness somewhat increases, that is regarding the phenomenon of suicides in general, which unfortunately has been increasing. Normally speaking, more men commit suicide than women. That itself is a very sad psychological fact. But recently we see some increase in the proportion of even women committing or women driven to suicide. A very sad situation. There is reason to say that some of it at least is induced by the phenomenon of corona and what is called as post-corona effects. They are more psychological in terms of an ongoing epidemic of depression, and sometimes that depression drives people to drastic steps. So one such subject that wants to test your sensitivities towards such humane issues. So this has been the broad point. Even I have been sharing with all youngsters. But every time I talk about a general broad pattern pertaining to UPSC exam, I have always been making it a point to tell everyone that perceive this as a general pattern, but keep your mind ready for any change in a given year. If at all one is to read any pattern in UPSC exam system, this is one defining part of that pattern, that given a year, there could suddenly be a change in the pattern in questioning or in the pattern in assigning subjects, topics on which you are now required to write your essays. I call it the beauty of UPSC exam system. This is how it must be. You can never be absolutely sure about a given pattern of an exam, of a certain exam. I am talking about UPSC. If we are to specifically restrict ourselves right now to only the essay paper, then there were years when there was no essay paper. In the 90s it was introduced. According to me, this was a right step to do. As officers, you are required to write in a cohesive fashion on issues pertaining to decisions or policies before administration and also before the country. So you have to have that skill of organizing your thoughts in a cohesive way, eminently readable way, clear, lucid, the capacity to say what you mean and the capacity to mean what you say. So the essay. But over all these years, I have seen even the nature of the essay paper change. Initially, there used to be 8 topics and you were required to pick up only one and write an essay. Then I saw the number of topics keep steadily reduce. So 7, 6, 5. Then suddenly came a year when there were 2 sections, A and B. And then it went on. Still I remember the years when you were asked to write each essay in about 2,500 words. 2 essays, mind you. So 5,000 words in 3 hours. May I say that this is practically humanly impossible. Writing 5,000 effective, meaningful, focused words within 3 hours. I repeat, it is practically humanly impossible. But then I also remember those years when UPSC said in the paper that while the word limit may be 2500 per essay, greater importance will be given to the quality of the words rather than the quantity of the words. Those were the years when then I suggested youngsters to stop worrying about one's own capacity to write 5000 words in 3 hours. Focus on doing your best. I think in 3 hours, you can write between 3000 to 3600 words depending on your own way of writing and whatnot. So I had told, stop worrying about the word so-called limit, just focus on the quality. And then across last couple of years, I also saw it change. Now generally last couple of years, 2 sections, each essay to be between 12 to 1500 words. So in 3 hours, you are required to write 2400 to 3000. Perfectly gettable. The time is perfectly manageable. So much so that you can also afford, and not only afford, that has been my suggestion, a very strong suggestion, to allot at least 15 to 20 minutes per essay to sit down quietly, prepare your notes, think very carefully about what would be a gripping, attractive start for your essay, how you would draw the attention of the examiner/reader towards your essay, how you would engage the examiner/reader in the essay, how the attention would be captivated, then how your essay would develop paragraph wise, what are the points, how are you going to substantiate those points with examples, maps, figures, charts, etc. And as the essay keeps increasing in its quality and depth and it reaches its climax, how in the last paragraph you are going to, so to say, sum up or conclude, pack the whole content in, if I may say, an inspiring way, so that even the examiner genuinely appreciates your essay. Take about 15 to 20 minutes to develop your essay, prepare your notes, and when it comes to UPSC, remember to strike out that page, because rough paper, rough pages, rough work is supposed to be stricken out. This has been my broad suggestion. Okay? But at the same time, I repeat, I have always been telling youngsters to keep the mind ready for a sudden change in the pursued pattern. Okay? That has happened this year in this essay paper. So if so far, last couple of years, one section consisted of rather abstract or philosophical subjects, and the other section was more concrete, more down to earth, more related to India, the issues, the policies. Okay? This year, you cannot be absolutely certain of any such division. This year, at least prima facie, in the first reading, all 8 subjects appear to be abstract or philosophical, and they challenge your capacity to think, capacity to understand the meaning, your capacity to develop the subject, make sensitive and creative points and substantiate those points. So, no defined section-wise division of abstract and concrete subjects. All 8. Generally, they are statements, very meaningful statements, but then I know that we may not know who wrote that particular statement. If you happen to know who wrote that particular statement, in what context was that statement made, it is possible that at least some part of the essay may be devoted to explaining the statement, the context, the source, the meaning, the interpretation, and then critical evaluation. But as usual, as is always, and I appreciate this feature, UPSC paper setting is simply brilliant. That's why I call UPSC exam as beautiful. That's my word, beautiful, because it is challenging. It is an adventure to perform, and that is how it has to be, because it's a process through which officers who are going to work for India, for Indians, for next about 30 approximate average years. So it better be that tough. So this time, section A and B, 4 topics each. All of them are certain statements, and with most of them I am reasonably certain that most of us will not be familiar. So then what do? The simple solution is, of course, from among given 4 topics in each section, our job is to pick up the one on which each one of us thinks that that would be my best essay. No other criteria. Your best essay. And then pay some attention, devote some time to think about it, jot down your points as you go on developing your essay. In a larger session, I have also explained various techniques of how to do that. This is not the time to repeat the same. And then the first essay you write should be your best essay. Between the 2 essays you are going to write, the first one you write should certainly be, to the best of your judgment, your better essay between the 2. So 8 statements. I repeat, all 8 are beautiful statements. Forests are best case studies for economic excellence. I am happily telling you that when initially I looked at all those 8, okay, I am happy to tell you, even I did not know the authors of very many statements. So rest assured, it is perfectly okay. Like I already told you, this afternoon my team of faculty members at Chanakya Mandal Pariwar, they made special efforts to find out the origins of this statement. But it is perfectly okay not to know it, and then just take a look at the statement. Think to the best of your capacity about what is its meaning, and then interpret and develop your essay. This one, forests are the best case studies for economic excellence. This is some HendrithVanlon Smith Jr. I suppose a CEO. So I presume a company, I presume that we are still to find it out. Mayflower-Plymouth. Okay. Actually, Plymouth is the name of the original colony that the British immigrants established when United States began to take shape. So like 16th century. And Mayflower also is a ship on which the British Puritans, Puritan is a sect in Christianity, British Puritans who were dissatisfied with moral degradation in Britain in 16th century, commissioned or chartered a ship. The name of that ship is Mayflower, and travelled to what was then called as the New World, okay, to create the kingdom, the biblical kingdom in God's concept. So the city on the hill. But I suppose this is some CEO of the company probably, or whatever. I mean, even I personally don't know. So just take a look at the statement. Forests are best case studies for economic excellence. Given 8 subjects, this, so to say, is closest to linking to the environmental issue, the challenges of global warming, the industrial pattern we followed, broadly speaking, since 1750, but the one that has now brought entire humanity on the verge of utter devastation, increasing extreme weather events. So we need a new kind of economy, which is green economy. eco-friendly, environment-friendly. So organic farming, zero emission, the Paris Agreement, and otherwise by the end of this decade, the ocean levels are going to go on increasing, and so on and so forth. The huge stuff, content. You can relate it to this. And one answer indeed is forests. So we need economic excellence. We need forests. One of even my personal favorite thinkers and scientists in especially biology, this is Edward O. Wilson, wrote a beautiful trilogy on environmental situation. In the third volume, he came out with a solution that is the title of that third volume, and it says Half Earth. The title of that last volume, the book is Half Earth, and his solution is 50% of the land should be under forest. When it comes to Bhutan, 72% of land is under forest, and that is a part of the new constitution for Bhutan, that forest cover should not reduce. And this can just go on and on and on. A very relevant subject that relates to the environmental issue. Forests are best case studies for economic excellence. Rest of the 7 subjects become ever more abstract. They are philosophical. So you decide which one you would pick up and prepare your essay. This evening when I meet the youngsters who have actually given the exam, they will talk to me. So I know they will tell me what is the topic most of them seem to have picked up. So the next one in section is poets are unacknowledged legislators of the world. This is a statement by one of the finest poets in English literature of all times. This is Shelley, writing an essay in 1821. The title of the essay is The Defense of Poetry. And Shelley, my personal favorite also, belongs to what is known as the Romanticist school of English poetry, closer to the nature. And very many poems by Shelley, the moment Shelley's name comes up, even my mind is filled with very many poems by Shelley. He says, poets are unacknowledged legislators of the world. So they build up the atmosphere. They develop people's minds. They may be the ones who come up with creative solutions which go on to become laws and legislations and whatnot. Many a times you will find that rulers are scared of poets. There have been instances where poems were banned. Unfortunately, there have been instances where poets have been sentenced to severe punishments, including the capital punishment, or they have been hanged, because the poetry they wrote was, so to say, iconoclastic, or it was against the tyranny. And the tyrants who were sitting there in strong positions of power felt threatened by poems. So and so on and so forth. So poets are unacknowledged legislators of the world. Third subject in section is history is a series of victories won by the scientific man over the romantic man. This is a statement by George Orwell, one of the greatest 20th century writers, activists and also thinkers. George Orwell was originally a committed socialist / communist. He actively participated in the Spanish Civil War between fascist versus socialist on the socialist side. But eventually he grew to understand the inherent flaws which also lead to double standards within the socialist and communist movements. So he left it and went on to come up with one classics after another. So his Animal Farm, according to me again, is absolute must read for everyone. It relates to also the communist history. But mind you, it also relates to power struggle. Right now we don't have time, I don't have time, and this is not the place to analytically examine the meaning, significance and beauty of this novel Animal Farm. Do read it originally. George Orwell also came out with what is known as dystopia. The antonym of utopia. Utopia is ideal kingdom. Dystopia is the negative portrayal of this kingdom. For George Orwell, by 1984, communism will have conquered the whole world, and the communist rulers will have taken away all individual freedom, and they would be watching everyone's life. George Orwell called it the Big Brother, and the Big Brother watches you, and so on and so forth. That George Orwell speaks about modern rational man who scores over or who wins over rather so-called idealistic or romantic concepts. So, history is a series of victories won by scientific man over romantic man. Personally, George Orwell is also aware that there are examples where scientific man actually ended up by creating a horrible state. For this, the best example indeed is Nazi or fascist states respectively created by Hitler and Mussolini. They also claimed to be scientific men. They were not romantic men, but they ended up by creating the states which were oppressive, which deprived every individual of dignity and individual freedom. So, history is a series of victories won by scientific man over romantic man is not like eternal truth for all times to come. There are limitations, and while writing essay, our jobs will be to understand the sentence and examine it from all angles, including, so to say, pros and cons or merits and demerits. It's not like there are only two sides to a given issue. There might be many sides. Our job will be to interpret all those many and of course come up with a very creative essay. Last, fourth topic in section A is a ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what the ship is for. This sentence also, I am happily telling you, I hope my happily telling you may add to your inspiration, sense of happiness, in the sense that don't be worried if you know nothing about a given statement and who, when, what, why said, etc. Even I am coming across for the first time. Nothing to worry. This is some John A. Shedd in his 1922 book, Salt from My Attic. I heard the name today for the first time. I heard the name of the book. My team developed this. I am thankful to them. So I happen to know and I am sharing it with you. But then you look at the sentence, a ship in harbor is safe. But that is not what ship is for. Even if you know nothing, may I say that it is rather simple and also beautiful to understand this sentence, that a ship can very easily be understood as a metaphor for life, your and my personal life, life of a society, life of a country, life of the whole earth, okay? So when ship sails, it is filled with uncertainties and difficulties and challenges and disasters, etc. A ship is safe in harbor. So should the ship always stay in the harbor? No. Although the ship may be safe in the harbor, that is not what the ship is for. The ship is for sailing, for adventures, for confronting difficulties. A ship is for journey and destination. So all sorts of uncertainties, difficulties, troubles that we think may be understood as opportunities really. to come out with better than our best. And if we seek to stay in the harbor, then the ship becomes practically useless. So, seeking safety, seeking a cocoon, not confronting journeys, travels, challenges, uncertainties, that's not life. So, a ship is in the harbor is safe, but that is not what ship is for. Then we come to section B. I have already made the point that this time both sections are largely, basically, essentially beautiful statements, but they are abstract subjects which need careful attention to develop them. So, section B, the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. What a beautiful statement. This is from US President John F. Kennedy's State of Union address in 1962. At the start of every calendar year, US President addresses the nation. The address is for two houses of US legislature. Through those two houses, US President talks to the people. That is known as State of Union address. And as the name indicates, in the State of Union, the President delivers sort of a report card about how United States is doing. And that year, January 1962, President Kennedy said the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. What it essentially means is, if it starts raining or winds start blowing, that is not the time to repair the roof. Time to repair the roof is when everything is okay, when the sun is shining. You prepare yourself in advance for the future, for coming seasons, coming troubles, coming defeat. Don't wait until the troubles actually start and then you try to repair the roof. The time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. And you can go on sharing your own examples from history. If you happen to know the context or that the statement is made by John F. Kennedy, then you might as well relate it to the Cold War, US-USSR relationship, and until the hostilities have not increased, it is time to repair the roof at home, in the world, and you can develop the subject. Second subject in section B is something on which personally I could really talk to you for like 2 hours. Beautiful subject. You cannot step twice in the same river. Originally, the statement is attributed to Greek thinker Heraclitus. And what he means to say is, the river is not same and you are not same. That you put your hand in the river, it's water flowing. You take your hand out, second time you put in, you may think this is the same river, Ganga Maiya, Kaveri, Godavari, and so on and so forth. The name may be the same, but the river has changed. You cannot put your hand twice in the same river. Then not only that the river has changed, okay, you have changed. You are not the same all the time. You keep changing from every split second to the next split second. We may have the body, the same identity known as Avinash, but that keeps changing. So not only that you can't put your hand in the same river, because by the time you put your hand in the river, second time around the river has changed. Not only that, even you have changed. So you are not the same. In fact, Osho, also known as Rajneesh, to me he is one of the best and one of the finest thinkers of 20th century world. He also refers to this statement and he says, not only that you cannot put your hand twice in the same river because river is not the same and you are not the same. Okay? He says, you can't put your hand in the river even once. Because he goes on to explain, that what you think is the river is illusion, Maya. And what you think you are, yourself, capital S, is Maya, is illusion. In Bharatiya thinking, one school of philosophy, self is an illusion. And you need to grow beyond that illusion to understand, maybe some thinkers say, the Advaita, to understand the Advaita. Your thinking that you are separate is a consequence of ego. You are surrounded by aham that develops yourself. And I know subtle differences between Vedanta philosophy and Buddha and Jain philosophy. And for us Bharatiyas, it's perfectly okay. Our job is to read, understand, and then decide which philosophy attracts my mind, which philosophy helps me live my life. You can't put your hand in the same river also refers to that everything is changing. Everything is constantly changing. You might as well relate it to Marxism also, because one of the most fundamental statements of Marxism indeed is nothing is being, everything is becoming. So there is no steady, all-pervading being. Sometimes that being may come to be called as God or Brahma or truth or Ruta as Vedas say, etc. Marx says nothing is being. Everything is becoming, just becoming. It's changing from one to the next. He explains the dialectical process for it. We don't have time right now to go into it. But that everything is changing. All the time, everything is changing. In Buddha philosophy, it's called Pratitya Samutpad. It's dependent origination. That the whole world is all the time changing. And one change leads to the other change. So Buddha philosophy also, Jain philosophy says Anitya. And Nitya, nothing is being. Nitya, always there. Eternal, immortal. Everything is changing. Anitya, the principle of Anitya. So you can go on relating. I am doing my best to resist all my temptations to discuss this beautiful part. If you have any relation or any prior, so to say, background, you can always relate it to this topic, and you might have picked up this one to write a beautiful essay. Then the third topic in section B is a smile is the chosen vehicle for all ambiguities. Man, what a subject. I repeat the word beautiful. A smile is the chosen vehicle for all ambiguities. So many meanings come to my mind like spontaneously. First of all, the beauty called a smile. A smile. A smiling demeanor. I always keep saying that what comes our way in our life is not under our control. Okay? But how we respond to what comes our way is under our control. And the first point in that response is smiling demeanor. Ups or downs, pleasures and pains, happiness and sadness, success and failure, recognition and lack of recognition, all sorts. This is life after all. We don't know what comes our way, but we do know, and we should know how we confront that. Our first response as a smile. Even for the interview, UPSC interview, I always keep saying that about 50% of a good interview is the smile. If you can face the interview board with a smile, no matter what is the question, how the interview panel is responding to you, etc., smile and respond. From interview to life, this is true. A smile, okay, is a chosen vehicle. Then this statement goes on to say that it's a chosen vehicle for all ambiguities, uncertainties. I saw the Hindi translation also, and in the paper the Hindi word used is asamanjas. तो पल भर के लिए मुझे लगा कि अगर हिंदी शब्द का उपयोग किया जाए असमंजस, तो उसका मतलब थोड़ा अलग होता है कि मैं असमंजस में पड़ गया, मेरे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है क्या करूं. एम्बिग्विटी एंड असमंजस. तो अगर किसी ने हिंदी में लिखा होगा ये देख के, तो मैं जानता हूं कि उसका इंटरप्रिटेशन थोड़ा सा अलग से हो जाएगा, जो कि सही बात है. बट ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ एम्बिग्विटीज, अनसर्टेनिटीज, एंड यू फेस देम विथ अ स्माइल. My team has told me that this is a statement by one of the finest modern American writers, Herman Melville, And still, given the time, we could not find out the origin of this statement. You can always develop an essay on smile as a chosen vehicle and on ambiguities, and go on defining the ambiguities and then go on explaining. Many examples do come to my mind, mind you. Swami Vivekananda was always smiling. Buddha, whenever you see Buddha, wherever you see Buddha, is always smiling. There is a beautiful, subtle smile on Buddha's face. Actually, during his journey in America, Vivekananda was asked that philosophers are supposed to be with a serious face. How come you are smiling? Vivekananda in fact said, more you understand life, more you feel like smiling. And he did refer to Buddha also, saying, was he not smiling? So a smile. Gandhiji always had a beautiful childlike smile on his face. And there were many complicated issues on which he was questioned, and his normal response used to be with a smile. At a point of time, Gandhiji was asked, what is your opinion about Western civilization? And Gandhiji smiled and said, it's a good idea. And you take your own time to interpret even this statement. So a smile is the chosen vehicle for all ambiguities. And the 8th topic, so the 4th one in section B is, just because you have a choice, it doesn't mean that any of them has to be right. This again happens to be from some Norton Juster in the book Phantom Tool Booth. He was an American academic, architect, writer, best known as an author of children's book, and notably it is the Phantom Tool Booth and some book named The Dot and the Line. Okay, this is all new for me. So I am thankful that it adds to my unending pursuit of knowledge. But you just focus on the statement. Just because you have a choice, given a situation, a problem, your personal life or collective life, society, nation, the whole world, that there are choices, it doesn't mean that any of them has to be right. So sometimes we are confronted with many choices, all of whom may be equally untenable or not applicable. So having many choices will not necessarily mean that one of them has to be right. One of the modern expressions of philosophy, the school called as existentialism. And there are very many thinkers in this school, but among the best of them happen to be Albert Camus, the one who wrote in French originally, or Jean-Paul Sartre, again a French great writer, thinker, philosopher, or an English writer, Samuel Butler. Albert Camus wrote Myth of Sisyphus and built his interpretation from ancient Greek mythology, in which here is a Sisyphus who is actually punished by gods to carry a huge rock uphill and settle it on the top of the hill. So Sisyphus is trying all the time to push that rock on the top of the hill and try to settle it. But the moment he reaches the hill, there is not enough space for the rock to settle, so it slips and comes back to the bottom. So Sisyphus has to come back and start pushing that rock again. So in the original Greek mythology, this is a punishment to Sisyphus, and it's an unending, never-ending punishment. Camus interprets it, changes it, and he says Sisyphus was lucky because all the time he had something to do, some meaningful activity, some goal to reach. Although the description is that Sisyphus was condemned to the freedom of choice. That sometimes having freedom of choice itself is a problem. You are confronted with lot of choices. मैं इधर जाऊं या उधर जाऊं. Caught between pair of scissors, both choices are equally wrong, and you are most likely to be cut down. There are proverbs in, say, Marathi language, in Hindi language, in almost all Indian languages that say the same thing. आसमान से टपका और खजूर में अटका. or damned if you do, damned if you don't. So whatever you do, you are damned. So having choices doesn't mean one of them has to be the right one. You are confronted with problematic choices. One of my most favorite thriller writers is this great British writer Frederick Forsyth. So I recommend all his novels to you. All of them are based on real life global situation. So each novel also helps us develop an insight into the situation he discusses. So one such novel by Frederick Forsyth is Devil's Alternative. Well, the novel is about 400 pages, but it is absolutely unputdownable and a page turner. You start on page 1, you will not feel like putting the novel down. To cut a long story short, this is a novel about a possible use of nuclear weapon, mind you. And whoever are in the novel, they are confronted with a choice as to whatever they do, the world is asking for disaster. Whatever decision they make, the world is heading towards nuclear holocaust. You try to avoid that nuclear holocaust, the world is heading towards another disaster. So it is called Devil's Alternative. This is what this topic is talking about. Having choices doesn't mean one of them has to be correct or has to be right one, and then you find your path across those choices. This is where our skill in action, yogaha karmasu kaushalam, our skill in action comes into picture as to how we find the path when all the choices with which we are confronted are like problematic choices, and still the right path to find out. That is what even Bhagwan Krishna says, that is what Bhagavad Gita teaches us. A recent American writer who wrote many outstanding self-help books. He is no more with us physically, but his books are immortal. I am talking of Stephen Covey. The title of one of his books is Third Way. Third Way. Excellent book, inspiring book. But what he essentially argues in that book is that there is always a third way. So sometimes you think you are confronted with two choices, both of them are equally bad. So idhar jaun ya udhar jaun. Both of them are equally bad. Don't think you are heading, you are facing a deadlock. He says there is always a third way. It's the test of our skill, our thinking. There is always a third way. That is what I describe as yogaha karmasu kaushalam. That yoga doesn't only mean sitting in a particular posture or breathing in a particular way. Those are means for yoga. Yoga means karmasu kaushalam, skill in action. So how you find your path, how you pick up your choice. Okay? So I was happy to discuss all this with you. As always, I look forward to your success and happiness. All my best wishes for you. I also look forward to sharing time with you on GS 1, 2, 3, 4 and history and optional. But as you know, till then and forever, all my best wishes for you.